You're listening to Hip Hope. It is Scotty here with you, and we are celebrating 116 Day. And joining us, part of the 116 Click, part of Reach Records. His album Dead or Alive came out last year, and his part two is coming out shortly. He's going to tell us all about it. We're joined by Tedashii. G'day, mate. How are you?
What's happening, bro? How you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. And happy 116 Day.
Hey, happy 116 Day to you too. I appreciate it.
No worries. I'm rocking the shirt today. So
Man,
and most days to be quite honest. And I've got a bit of a fanboy story to tell you while I was wearing this shirt when I went to
yeah,
go check out a movie last year. In fact, we've got a couple of fanboy stories to tell you about. But before
let's
we
go.
get into any of that, I want to talk to you a bit about your background, where you grew up, some of your hip hop influences, and
Yeah.
what it was that got you into your music.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. Shout out to all the listeners. I appreciate the support. Man, I grew up in what we call the great state of Texas. We're very prideful about our state, but I grew up
Awesome.
in Texas. Grew up right outside of Houston in the Houston area. And so being from that part of the state, being from that part of the country, the two things that always stood out the most for me was sports and music. My mom, I grew up, my mom sang in blues clubs when I was a kid, and my mom was also an educator and she was a coach. So those two parts of my life were really, really huge. And as I got older, I got into sports. If you come from the state of Texas, you're a male, they make you play football, like almost make you. I mean, it's almost a law. You got to
Get a
play
pig
football.
in when you
So
come out of the womb, right?
right, exactly, bro. Exactly. So, except in this case, I wish I knew how to play football, as Europeans would say, but it's really American football. So,
Yep.
I know nothing about soccer, honestly. But I grew up playing football and ended up graduating high school, going to college. Got a partial scholarship to go to school to play sports, another partial scholarship for academics. So I'm on scholarship in college and university for academics and for athletics. And that was kind of my journey as a person overall, man. I was really involved with athletics heavily. I cared so much about my grades. I tell everybody I was an athletic nerd. Like I cared about my grades. I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA. Like I was really serious about it. So I was like, you know what? This is my world. I'm gonna go here, graduate college, be an athlete, go to the NFL, all that. And then eventually, while practicing one day, I ended up getting injured, and that ended my football career. And so from there, I started stepping into more of not really by choice or not as a plan. It was really just a pastime to start messing around with music. It was the
Yeah.
easy pastime to do because during this time, all of my friends happened to be people who like to rap. They weren't trying to be rappers. They loved hip hop so much they wanted to do it too. So we would
Mm.
all sit around and rap and create music while I'm on bed rest. Like I'm injured, so I can't leave. And so I'm just stuck in my dorm room and I started making music. And the American sociologist Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote a book, and in the book Outliers, he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. If it's true that it takes 10,000 hours to become proficient and excellent at anything, then I got my 10,000 hours in hip hop while being on bed rest, bro. Like it
Wow.
happened.
There you
So
go.
from there, I really did just start pursuing music.
And who were some of the early influences? Because when I listen to your music, I can hear little bits and pieces throughout a little bit of Tupac over here, and we'll get to some of that homage within Dead or Alive. A little bit of Exhibit over here as well. Like I'm just picking up little bits and pieces across the way. Who were some of your early influences in hip hop?
Yeah. So early influence, you hit the nail on the head. It was all West Coast music. It
Yeah.
was it was Ice Cube. He was the first one. It was NWA as a whole. And then eventually there was a guy by the name of DJ Quick out of the West Coast. He was a big influence for me. But then just the whole West Coast scene as a whole began to be influential. But while that was the case, because you know, NWA came out in the late 80s, early 90s, and my older cousins were showing me this music. At that same time, what was bubbling in Texas was our own version of hip hop there. So I had there were artists like UGK with Pimp C and Bun B. There was guys like Paul Wall, Chameleonaire, Slim Thug, all these Houston rappers that I grew up like fans of. All of them started to influence my music. But as you said it, probably the biggest influence overall was Tupac. Like I remember being in my dorm room playing Tupac's music. The full song is playing, and I'm rapping over top of it, just rapping my own lyrics because I was such a fan, but I loved hip hop. So yeah, those are some real big early The only one that I didn't mention and who's probably different because he's from the East Coast is LL Cool J. LL was the one who got me interested in hip hop as a genre. I heard
Yeah.
one of his songs and I was like, yo, this dude is speaking my language. Like he's saying something about my own life. I identify with this. So I bought in to everything LL was doing. But then eventually, like you said, West Coast, Tupac, and then Texas rap.
Yeah, and that really shines the Texas side of things in Texas Pete, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But first, I want to hear a bit about your faith journey. Did you grow up in a Christian home? How did the faith and the music all come to intertwine?
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't grow up in a religious home, a Christian home. I grew up, let me say it a different way. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I grew up in a religious home. So
Okay.
my mom was the person who Sundays we were going to go to church, but the rest of the week, God wasn't really a part of it, even though he might have been for her. He wasn't for
Mhm.
the family. It just kind of
Right.
was what it was. Fast forward, I go to college and I ended up becoming a Christian in college. There was a brother there. His name is Keenan. He's a really good friend to this day. Keenan actually walked up to me and cold call evangelism, just shared the gospel. And I instantly rejected it. I was like, it feels judgy. You don't know me, man. Tupac said it. Only God can judge me. Like you can't judge. Like I was in my feelings. I was like, get away from me, bro. You can't judge me. Fast forward, 2 weeks later, he comes up and he shares the gospel with me again. And this time, God had done enough work in my life. Within that 2 week time span, I'd gotten injured, like I spoke earlier about. And on top of that, I was losing my scholarship. Plus, the girlfriend I had at the time had broken up with me. So there was all these, teenage heartbreak moments that were happening that were life altering. And then here comes this man telling me about Jesus with the most life altering news of all. And I ended up surrendering my life to God on campus right there. And
Wow.
so music wasn't really a part of that. It was really just trying to figure out how to be a person that I know I was supposed to be. And then out of that, actually, it was Keenan who said, the guy who led me to Christ, he was the one who ever said, hey, why don't you take one of your raps and write them about God? Like he was the first one to ever say that to me. I had never heard of Christian rap. I never heard of anybody doing it. So when he said it, I laughed and I was like, you crazy. I'm not rapping about God. Like, don't nobody do that. That's weird. And he was like, man, trust me, it'll be great. And I was like, nah, bro, you can't get a girlfriend rapping about God. I'm good. I'm cool, bro. Now you want me to be the weirdest dude on campus right now. I'm not doing that. But he had a lot of sway, man, and he convinced me. I ended up writing a song, and that was my first ever song I did in Christian hip hop, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Um, but anyway, all that to say, Keenan was kind of the first influence. But my music career started after leaving college, going back to Houston, leaving Houston, and going to Dallas. And in Dallas is where I met Lecrae, Trip Lee, Sho Baraka, and we all
Yeah.
started doing music together. And the whole 116 was kind of born.
Yeah. And it's been an awesome journey, and it continues. Last year, you released Dead or Alive Part One. We'll talk about Part Two in just a moment. And can I just
Yeah.
say, I really want to thank you for this album and for how candid and transparent you are, and I don't think that is something that we should take for granted, because it's not just on this album, it's every album. But you said it's about choosing to live. It's a journey of choosing to live, and you share about the trauma that you've been through and the healing that you've experienced. And you don't need to go into detail if you don't feel comfortable to, but if you can give me a bit of an arching view of what Dead or Alive Part One looks like for you, please.
Yeah, no doubt. So, first of all, thank you for your kind words. That means a lot for real. and for taking notice of the effort in the art. Like, I appreciate that. There's a place in hip hop. I know you've heard this phrase before in hip hop. People say real recognize real. Like I know what it's like to see someone not being their true self, and you recognize it. But if someone is being authentic and true, you can recognize that as well. And I didn't want to do music and pretend. I wanted to be honest and upfront. And so I try my best to be as transparent as I can. But Dead or Alive comes from a real place. So this project comes off the heels of so many hardships I've already went through in life, with
Yeah.
loss, losing a son, losing a stepmother. I've lost two sisters. I lost my grandmother recently. And there's all these moments of loss that are taking place in the midst of just daily life and hardship that happens as a husband, father, whatever. But on tour, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, I was on tour and we were in Florida, and I ended up having a really nasty fall backstage, trying to navigate in the dark to go on stage for this group set finale that we do for our tour. And it was honestly, it was at the last tour stop. So I'm headed out, and I take a step, miss, trip over some wires. I end up falling forward, and it's pitch black. So I'm like, I'll just put my hands out and catch myself on the ground. It'll be fine. And
Yep.
before I ever reached the ground, I hit my head on the giant metal pipe that's holding up the screen that we're using, this giant
Mm.
IMAX screen that we're using. I hit my forehead, I keep falling, and I hit my face right under my eye, my right eye. And so I lacerate my face in two places. I hit my mouth, my tooth shifts, my nose, the right nostril, and my upper lip are numb, and I'm bleeding profusely. And they get me up, they take me to the back. Eventually we go to the hospital. I leave getting 21 stitches and having a severe concussion. And that's the words of the emergency room doctor. He was like, man, you're going home with a severe concussion. So I want you on bed rest for 6 weeks. No moving, no nothing. And I was like, really? He said, if you're going to do anything, let somebody else do it. If there's something that's got to get done, ask someone else to do it. You don't need to move. This is serious. So I was like, okay. And then I got home and I didn't listen at all. And I got back in the car. And 2 weeks later, I got back in the car and I started riding out. And I ended up having, and I wasn't driving, I was riding. And I ended up having vertigo for 5 minutes. I felt like I
Oh,
was falling. I ended up throwing up. I got back home. I got back down in the basement, and everything I'm doing, someone has to help me do it. And I realized he was right. Like, it's not time. I can't move. So brain injuries are such that you can't rush the process. It's a thing that on its own it has to heal. So I've had concussions before playing football, playing sports, but this was different and honestly compounded because of the previous concussions. Fast forward, it's about 6 weeks in. I am alone. I spent 6 weeks in my basement with no one to visit. No one came by. No one checked on me. I was on tour with a lot of people. I was on the road with a lot of people. I've been around friends, family, community with a lot of people, but it was really just me. And my kids would come down and help when they could. So in that moment, I felt so alone. Then 6 weeks in, not only did I feel alone, but I ended up losing hearing in both my ears and my vision went blurry. The doctor told me your brain will sometimes shut down minor functions to maintain major functions. I never knew hearing and vision were minor. I just didn't
minor,
know
yeah.
that. I'm like, what, bro? He was like, nah, I tell you, it just what it'll come back. Just wait. Your brain has to heal. So for a few days, vision's blurry. For almost a week, I couldn't hear out of one ear, and the other one
Wow.
would go in and out. So I'm terrified. One night, 2 a.m., I get up. I'm trying to go to the restroom, and I ended up falling on the ground, and I start crying, and I'm just upset, bro. And I'm like, this ain't right, man. I'm not. This is not how my life should be. And I start getting so frustrated, and I'm like, is this it for me? Like, is this what my life is now? And I just start crying, and I look at there was a clock on the table in front of me, and I look at that and I see the time, and I'm like, man, it just reminded me of all those late AM nights I had after my son passed. And this thought came in my mind, you should just end it all here. Like, you should just end it. And I say that publicly because I know there are people who often have suicidal ideations, and we all wrestle at times with wondering if we're worth even still existing. And I had that moment, and in that moment, I could hear that thought, and literally the very next thing that came in my head and upon my heart, it like pressed on me. It was so powerful, and it said, "Why would you do the devil's work for him? If the
Woo.
devil comes, if the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy, why would you do his work for him?" And then I'm on my knees in my basement. It's 3 in the morning, and I'm screaming and pointing. You gonna have to kill me. I'm not gonna do it for you. You gonna have to kill me. I'm not gonna do it for you. And I'm emotional. And then I'm emotional. It's funny now as I look back, not that moment, but right after I said that, I went to get up only to realize, like, wait, I can't stand, I'm dizzy. So I had to literally crawl to the bathroom still. So it was like I had this super powerful spiritual moment, and then it's back to being like I'm a human crawling to the bathroom. And so all of that to say, like, it was such a powerful moment that it was really where everything came from. Dead or alive, you decide. Like, you get to
Mm.
choose. Are you going to live, or are you going to die? And or are you going to die? Are you going to choose life or choose death? And I ended up choosing life in that moment. And I wrote it because I want other people to, no matter who's talking bad about you, who seems to have forgotten about you, no matter how hard life is, what you physically, mentally, or emotionally going through, what seems like such a distant thing spiritually, your life is valuable and it has meaning and purpose. So don't do the devil's work for him. And I
Mm.
decided to live. And that's where all of this music came from, part one and part two.
Amen, man. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea how severe it was. We did pray for you on the show
Thank
after
you.
we got news that it happened, and I'm so sorry for what you went through and that recovery. But yeah, out of that, obviously, the opportunity to touch so many people with the songs on Dead or Alive Part One and Part Two. I'm going to share with you a bit of a fanboy moment. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah. Let's do it.
driving in the truck that we've got for the radio station. It's got the logo and everything all over it. And I was going to a Focus on the Family, Focus on the Family.
Yes, totally,
So they were
totally.
having an event here in Adelaide, and they asked me to be the host. And it was the day that Dead or Alive came out. So I'm like,
Ah,
awesome. So I'm gonna hook it up via Bluetooth to the truck. I'm gonna crank it up as I'm driving, and I'm a huge Tupac fan myself. So as the album starts, there's like, I don't know if you call them skits or vignettes or whatever
yeah,
you
yeah,
call
yeah,
them,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's like a little skit going on, and I'm like, oh man, this takes me back to those mid 2000s albums that I used to listen to, like Exhibit, and even back in the 90s with like Tupac. And when I was a teenager, this is amazing. And then the intro to Dead or Alive starts up, and it's exactly a homage to Live and Die in LA. And I'm just in this Life FM branded car going, yeah, this is amazing. And I'm just marking out absolutely huge on the way to this Focus on the Family event in this brand new car. And everyone's like, I don't know where this guy is going, but I'm not sure if I want to follow him. But I absolutely
Ah,
loved it.
man, thank you for saying that, bro. I appreciate it for real. That's awesome. That's what I was hoping for. Is that people would get it, like they would know, like these were real moments in my life where I was trying to make a choice about who I was. So yeah, man, that's so awesome.
Yeah, I loved it. So let's jump to part two. So that's coming
Yeah,
out soon, like in the next few weeks. So tell us a bit
yeah.
about what we can expect with Dead or Alive Part Two.
Yeah, man. So Dead or Alive Part One really was my effort to say, hey, Christian hip hop, here is me rapping. Like, I'm about to give you all of that. And Dead or Alive Part Two is hip hop, but I open up myself a little more to fuse in other genres a little more, to be more of the Tedashii that people have come to know. And so with that comes some more skits, but it also comes with a little more creativity around the sonics. But honestly, I think it's my favorite one out of all of them so far. And so I'm already working on part three. Dead or Alive part two is coming. But the idea of the whole thing is just to get people to choose life. Like, wherever you are, wherever you're going, choose life. And so I'm super excited about it. There are tons of people who are involved. I think one of my I think one of my most favorite ones, there's an artist by the name of DKG who out of Detroit who's on it with me. And he is phenomenal. The dude is killing it. But yeah, overall, it's one of those projects that really does resonate with my heart because it speaks to the continuation of choosing to live and what that looks like. And so tons of artists involved. Like I got a special song with a bunch of features. Like I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Now, fanboy moment number two. So,
Yeah.
so I got invited. I'm not going to get invited to do anything anymore, but I got invited to a media screening of Gran Turismo, and I
Yeah.
loved games growing up, and I'm a bit of a petrol head, and I was wearing this exact 116 shirt. So I'm sitting there in the cinema. And there's a bit of a scene. I think it's when they're still in the Nissan Academy, and there's a couple of songs. There's Coming In Hot by Lecrae and Andy, and then of course there's Get Out My Way by Your Good Self. And I'm there in, I don't know, probably the second or third row, just like fist pumping. I'm like, yeah, go get it, guys. And everyone's like, this is just like a scene of these guys training. Like, what's this guy getting all excited about? But it's I was like, but it's Tedashii and it's Lecrae in Gran Turismo. This is my life complete. So again, they're probably like, I don't know what this guy is watching, but he's having a good time.
I love it. Bro, every one of those moments have been full circle moments. So I relate to what you're saying, like sitting there and going like, wait, hold up. Like what? It's in this movie. Like I didn't know they used it till the day the movie came out. They
Really?
weren't the label was like they weren't hush about it. They were just slow to communicate. So I was like, all right, cool. Maybe they used it, maybe they didn't. Moving on. Because at one point they were supposed to use it for the trailer, but they ended up not doing that. So because they didn't use it for the trailer, I just assumed they didn't use it at all. So the label called me maybe a week before and said, hey, they're still thinking about using it. We'll see. And I was like, okay, cool. So then they do this big trip to the movie theater for all the label to go to, and they go watch the movie, and then the song comes on. And I'm not there, but I'm getting text. They're like, yo, man, did you know your song was in there? I was like, no, what? So I bought a ticket for that night and took my boys, and we went to go watch it. And it was just, it's surreal, bro, to see your name in the movie credits of a movie.
Oh
It's
wow, yeah, that
it was
would be
weird.
true.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
trippy for real.
the other one was I think it was an ad for the iPhone, and it
Yes.
was during an NCAA championship game. I think so. Being a football fan, that must have been a bit of a trip in itself, right?
Yes, no, for sure. So I'm at home, like again, I'm a father. So I'm at home with my boys, my wife is gone, and I'm sitting here and we're playing a game that I play with them when we clean up. I'm like getting them to do stuff and timing them and all that, boys, you do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Doing the
So
exact same thing.
so I'm doing that with them, but the game is on. It's like background noise, and I'm looking every now and again. So I go upstairs with them. I start putting stuff away. I come back down in my phone, and it has 67 missed texts. And I was like, what in the world? And then they just kept coming in. But I was like, I'll look later. I'm still busy. So when I finally get them down to bed, I go look. I got like 150 texts. I'm like, what is going on right now? I look at one and they're like, dude, the game, this is crazy. The game, the game. So I was able to rewind it, go back and see the moment in the championship game when it came on. And I was like, I had zero clue that they were using it. I don't even
Yeah.
think the label knew. I think they figured it out the night before and then rushed it and sent it off. It blew my mind. It was mind blowing. I was like, wait, what? So I didn't know it was going to show at that time. I didn't know that they were using it. I didn't know what was happening. So I just was blown away. So, but the cool thing, so Apple did another commercial a while back, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the not emojis, but me emoji, you know what I'm saying? Like you can take an emoji and mimic it with your face and do
Oh
and
yeah.
talk, and it has your
Mhm.
movements and all that. So when they first introduced those, it was with a commercial, and they used a song from Big Boy from Outkast. They used one
Mhm.
of his songs, and I was watching it. I love the song, love the commercial, and I remember sitting there, and I was like, it would be amazing to have an Apple commercial, just because it felt so fun. It wasn't even about Apple. They just did such a good job. I'd be like, I was sitting at home, literally like that would be super cool, and I was like, moving on. Like that's just kind of how I did it. So to see it actually happen, I was like, God, you heard my little prayer off to myself. what? So it was crazy, bro. It's one of those moments where you realize the music is more impactful than you ever know.
I love how it's just as much of a surprise for you as it is for us. And that
Totally.
you have, yeah, you have such a genuine reaction to it. It's awesome, but it's such an amazing opportunity. We love celebrating on the show, those crossovers with
Thank you, bro.
hip hop into the mainstream, whether it be in commercials, video games, or WWE entrances, or whatever the case
Yeah.
is. Like, it's
Yeah,
so
bro.
good. And such a powerful opportunity for you to get the word out there to that secular audience. So praise God, man.
Yeah, bro. God is good, bro. I'm telling you.
Absolutely. Oh, mate, it's been a real pleasure spending a bit of time with you today, celebrating 116 Day. No doubt there's going to be plenty of surprises. So keep your eyes across all the socials and everything for some little teasers and maybe some new music and some maybe some sales on some merch and that sort of thing. It's a great day. If people want to keep up to date with what you're doing with your music and, of course, with the release of Dead or Alive Part 2, what's the best way to keep in touch?
Yeah. So the best way to keep in touch is my website, tedashiionline.com. That's where you can find everything that I'm doing, as well as everything social media. It's just at Tedashii. So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or X, or whatever they want to call it now. And I'm on Facebook everywhere. So yeah, I'm there.
Awesome. And we've tagged you in some social posts as well for this interview so people can jump on our socials and find you there as well.
Yeah.
Tadashi, it's been a real pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us today, spending 116 Day here with us. Blessings to you and your family.
Man, blessings to you too. And Happy New Year to everybody.